Welcome to Capacity Building Stories Climate Action 101, a podcast brought to you by the Paris Commune and Capacity Buildings Network in partnership with the United Nations University. I'm Eva Costas, your host, and in this series, we're breaking down the essentials of climate action, 101 style. Join us as we explore key concepts related to climate change while connecting the dots between capacity building, research, policy, and practical solutions. Let's dive in. Welcome to NAPS and Climate Risk Finance 101. Today, we're diving into the intersection of National Adaptation Plans, NAPS, and Climate Disaster Risk Finance and Insurance, also known as CDRFI. We'll explore what the topics are, why they matter for building resilience against the impacts of climate change, and what the future holds for capacity building and policy integration in this area. And today, to guide us through this topic, I'm joined by two experts in the field, Serene Oh from the United Nations University and Tuga Alaskari from the United Nations Development Program. Sarah and Tuga, could you please introduce yourselves to our listeners?
Yeah, nice to meet you all. My name is Serene Oh, and I'm a project associate at UNU EHS Munich Climate Insurance Initiative. It's a pleasure to meet you all.
Thank you. My name is Tuga Alaskari. I work for the United Nations Development Program, where I'm the global lead for sovereign risk financing. It's a pleasure to join you today.
Thank you both for being a part of the episode. It's an honor to have you. So, Serene, to start us off, could you explain to us what are national adaptation plans and why should countries implement them?
Yeah, sure. Before we dive into National Adaptation Plan, maybe I can briefly explain what climate adaptation is. So climate adaptation means taking action to prepare for and adjust to the current and projected impacts of climate change. So the key challenge in adaptation is a significant finance gap. So there's a huge gap between the cost of adaptations and the funding available. So in 2023, UNEP estimated on their adaptation gap report that the adaptation finance gap in developing countries is at 194 to 366 billion US dollar per year. So adaptation needs to be well planned and also very cost effective. So this is one of the reasons why national adaptation plan process is critical, because National Adaptation Plan basically helps countries to identify their vulnerabilities and also at the same time the countries to develop strategies and build resilience. So this can be done by integrating adaptation activities into the country's national development plan or the country's policies. So this kind of coordinated and long-term response is especially important for developing countries because they are mostly vulnerable to climate impacts in such an area like agriculture or livelihood. So in summary, national adaptation plans provide a sort of roadmap for the countries to reduce their climate vulnerability and build resilience.
Thank you so much for that, Sarah. And turning into the financial aspect, because just now you were talking about the adaptation finance gap, and I would assume that this is when climate and disaster risk finance and insurance comes into play. So, Tuga, could you actually tell us a little bit more about CDRFI and give us examples about combining CDRFI with NAPS to essentially enhance climate resilience?
Absolutely. So climate and disaster risk finance and insurance, or as you say, CDRFI, includes a range of financial instruments and strategies that aim to improve the financial preparedness and resilience of both individuals, societies, and governments against climate and natural hazards. For example, weather index insurance is a type of CDRFI. Weather index insurance provides financial protection to people like farmers based on specific weather conditions, for example, rainfall levels. So if a farmer has purchases weather index insurance and rainfall drops below a certain threshold during the growing season, then they receive a payout to cover losses and sustain their livelihoods. This insurance can encourage investments in better farming practices, it can promote resilience to climate change, and it also provides quick financial support during adverse weather events to stop them from going into very detrimental negative coping mechanisms without this kind of protection. So on the integration of CDRFI with NAPS, you can create a powerful adaptation tool through this approach. First of all, CDRFI provides a cost-effective way to countries to manage climate risks. By doing so, countries can enhance their resilience and lower long-term costs of a disaster. They can be better prepared for future climate impacts. Secondly, and quite importantly, CDRFI helps quantify climate risks and damages. Just the process of developing these risk finance solutions, these insurance solutions, requires risk assessment and data generation. It requires an understanding of the risk and a pricing of the risk, which provides a very critical insights which can be used to refine and further develop NAPs. It also makes adaptation planning processes more data-driven and tailored to a specific country's needs and its vulnerabilities. And finally, when combined with NAPs, CDRFI secures infrastructure investments by providing financial protection against climate risks. This not only safeguards projects in vulnerable regions, but it also boosts investor confidence, making it more likely that sustainable development projects will move forward.
Sorry, I'm wondering if you'd have anything else to add to these insights.
Yes, I think Tuga really well explained why CDRFI is an essential tool, especially for planning and also implementing the national adaptation plans. So maybe I can just give a concrete link in a real example. So as we mentioned before, CDRFI can provide financial instruments to address specific climate challenges. So for example, let's say a country faces severe drought and this drought is impacting food security and crop production of the country. Then the country needs an adaptation tool to address this challenge. So in this case, the country can incorporate crop insurance as an agriculture adaptation strategy, and it can be included in the country's national adaptation plan. So this kind of integration, it can ensure that financial tools are well aligned with the country's hazard context, and so that it can enhance the overall effectiveness of the country's climate actions and the country's adaptation plan. And I know that UNDP is also working closely with the countries, so maybe Tuga can provide one more example, how country can link CDRFI into their national adaptation planning or adaptation actions.
Yeah, thank you, Serene. I can give you an example from Tanzania, where the agricultural sector is susceptible to climate shocks, particularly drought. In Tanzania, it's estimated that an annual average economic loss of $140 million is experienced due to drought-related yield losses of the main crops in the country. At UNDP, we're working with the government of Tanzania to implement a comprehensive program to strengthen the resilience of the agricultural sector, with a strong focus on sustainability. So on the one hand, we have a framework called the Tripartite Agreement Program, where we're working with global insurance companies. The Tripartite Agreement was signed with the Insurance Development Forum. 20 of the world's largest insurance companies are working with us across different countries in this program. It's financed by the German government through BMZ. And so what we're doing is we're working on the development of a risk finance solution, which would allow government to set up an agricultural insurance scheme that pays out in the event of a disaster. In addition to this, so this is the work that we're doing with the industry. In addition to this, we're working with national insurance players, from the regulator to work on advancing the enabling environment, with academic institutions on a certified program to enhance actuarial capabilities in the country. And we're also working with local insurance companies to innovate and develop solutions that can offer protection to farmers against climate shocks. But all of this is underpinned by a comprehensive program on the policy front. We work with government on critical policies, including NAPs, including their insurance policies, to ensure that the risk finance solutions are anchored into the policy frameworks that are important for government, and also within a broader resilience building and sustainable development building agenda.
I think it's clear from both of your examples that to truly build resilience, both of these tools work hand in hand, and Tuga, you referred to them as a powerful tool for adaptation. But I understand as well, and you were talking about it in your example just now, Tuga, that success as well for these tools to work relies on a country's ability, capacity to implement them effectively. And this is where capacity building comes into place. So Tuga, I was wondering, so when it comes to integrating NAPs with CDRFI, what would you say are the key capacity building gaps? And how can these gaps be addressed to ensure that countries both implement these plans, but also access the finance that they need?
That's a great question. So, although the integration of NAPS and CDRFI is essential for countries, it does require several capacity building needs, and I could divide these into three broad areas. So, there is a need for technical expertise. Many countries, particularly in the global south, lack the technical expertise required to assess climate risk and to implement the financial instruments effectively. Although CDRFI helps countries assess and quantify their climate risks, which is a critical step for developing high quality NAPs, by utilizing data on historical climate events and risk assessments, countries can identify the most pressing vulnerabilities and priority actions in their adaptation strategies. This is an area that many international or regional funds require, but countries or entities often struggle with it. This is because quantification demands robust data, expertise, and advanced modeling, which is sometimes lacking. Imagine that you have to measure climate risk for your country or quantify how many people benefit from a specific adaptation project. It's not easy. So developing countries need to work on developing these capabilities, and training programs are needed that focus on risk assessment, financial management, climate adaptation strategies, development. These are important for bridging the gap. A second area that's important is data management. We find this across a lot of the work that we do, that collecting and analyzing data, while key to making smart decisions, is often, there are many gaps there. So we need a lot of information like past disaster records, crop production numbers, and other key metrics that help us to better understand, measure, and predict future risks. And so the challenge that many countries and communities face is they don't have the tools or knowledge to do this. It's important for us to work with governments to build these skills, to build the capabilities of collecting, managing, and analyzing climate and disaster data in order to improve NAPS and make CDRFA tools more effective. At UNDP, we're working with both global and local insurance companies to develop parametric insurance solutions. And what we found is that the risk analytics that used to develop those programs could provide the missing data, but it's important to ground truth those. And so we have to work with academic institutions, with meteorological organizations to systematically strengthen the collection of data. But those models are a good starting point, the risk models that insurance companies bring. And actually, this process itself, as we start to collect the data and try to address the gaps, it sends really important signals on the scale of the problem, the scale of the risk that is faced. It starts to, by tagging a price to the risk, when we start to talk about insurance, it really raises awareness on the interventions needed. So whether risk reduction measures or the insurance products or adaptation needs and so on. The final area that I'd like to stress is on partnerships, collaborative partnerships. So building partnerships between governments, financial institutions, and research organizations is very important to sharing knowledge and resources that could help strengthen these capabilities. It involves both national and international collaborations. So at the national level, different ministries need to work together. So even in the case that I gave where we're talking about an agricultural scheme, while the Ministry of Agriculture is potentially the lead partner, we need to work with the Ministries of Finance. The national adaptation plans might be with the Ministry of Environment. The insurance regulator plays an important role. The disaster management agency plays a role. And so it's important to ensure that there is adequate consultation and collaboration to develop these solutions together and to integrate them into existing policies. At the international level as well, countries can seek support from different organizations like ourselves, like the United Nations agencies or climate funds. And in addition to that, the private sector, which also plays a role and has some important resources. These partnerships will help make NAPS and CDRFI more effective, leading to better outcomes for vulnerable communities.
Thank you so much for that. I think you clearly show, again, that the partnerships and collaborations that need to take place to essentially bridge the research capacities, policy gaps, and then bridging that together with practice. And you did mention at one point, just looking more specifically on the policy front end of things, you mentioned at one point that risk finance solutions need to be anchored in policy frameworks and the broader sustainability agenda. And this makes me think as well of the links between national adaptation plans and how they're aligned with the nationally determined contributions, and how countries can essentially streamline both their adaptation and mitigation efforts while also securing the necessary funding. So, Sarah, in terms of the how and what this looks like in practice, what would you say needs needs to happen next at the policy level to ensure the better integration between NAPs and NDCs, particularly in securing the financing needed for resilience?
Of course, yeah. I think Tuga's explanations are really great and important, especially the partnerships part. I think it should be done not only national way, but also in international aspects. This is very critical. So at the policy level, I think the first thing is that countries should create a clear link among their climate policies. So this will include National Adaptation Plan and also NDC, Nationally Determined Contribution. So while National Adaptation Plan kind of covers the country's climate vulnerability and adaptation needs, NDCs are focused on not only adaptation, but also mitigation. So combining these insights from both policies can ensure a coherent strategy for addressing climate risk, of course. And this alignment can avoid duplication and ensure that adaptation priorities are consistently reflected in both. And I only mentioned national adaptation policy plan and NDC, but some countries also have their own another climate plans or climate strategies. So all of this should be interlinked together to be more consistent and coherent. So this kind of collaboration and clear link require firstly coordination among ministry. Can be done by harmonized climate goals among sectors. For example, if you are developing agriculture insurance, Agriculture Ministry and Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Environment, three ministries are likely to be involving in the project, so collaboration would be the key. And secondly, the country really needs to identify which CDRFI instruments are the most effective in terms of reducing their long-term climate vulnerabilities. So in that sense, country needs to be really strategic and analyze themselves in more data-driven way. And moreover, lastly, country really needs to review their financial gaps and ensure adequate resources are directed towards climate resilience in activities. So how much the country needs and how much the country can contribute and how much they need to mobilize the finance would be the key aspect of this.
So I'd want to look a bit deeper as well, and because through the conversation, both of you have mentioned the collaboration and partnerships and have highlighted the roles of key actors, from the private sector to governments, academia. But I'd really love to delve a bit deeper into the role that the CDRFI community plays into all of this. And this can make up insurers, financial institutions, but then also as well development agencies. So Tuga, why would you say the CDRFI community can do to forge the links between adaptation planning and CDRFI?
I would say that one of the important areas that the CDRFI community can work on is capacity building, really building in those capabilities at the national level. This community includes various international organizations such as UN Agency and Climate Funds, but it also includes the private sector, insurers and others, leveraging those technical expertise, but building them nationally, strengthening those nationally. One of the things that I'd like to talk about is actually at UNDP, we have a partnership with Milliman, the world's largest actuarial service provider. And what they're doing is they undertake an analysis in the countries that we work in nationally to look at actuarial capacities. And jointly with government and local stakeholders, we develop a roadmap to look at how we could address those. So that involves building in courses into academic institutions so that you have the right expertise, those that are able to quantify risk nationally. This is a sustainable approach rather than, bringing in a project-based approach where we, for the duration of the risk finance solution development, and then we move on. It's difficult for the country to identify which CDRFI they should plan and implement, and it's difficult to use models and tools and quantify their climate risks. So it's important to, through this roadmap that we develop with countries, to look at where the data needs are, look at where the actuarial skills are, look at what barriers might be preventing local players from stepping in, what are the barriers that are preventing communities from accessing these CDRFI solutions that have such a potential transformative impact, and And in that way, we could map a pathway forward for addressing these and building resilience at the national level.
Now, bringing everything together and kind of taking a bit of a forward-looking view to kind of where this is heading to, I'd say, and from both of your interventions, it's clear as well that these efforts should be country-led, but also responsive to the needs of country. So all about kind of enhancing this country ownership. So I was wondering if the two of you could tell us a little bit about what these countries' needs are for now, but also what needs to happen next as well but also for the country level.
Yeah, I think the main goals are pretty clear. So for the countries to successfully integrate CDRFI into national adaptation plans, country really needs to address finance gap and also capacity building gap. This means that investing in resources to help governments, private sectors, and communities to understand and really implement risk management tools effectively. So the key would be to ensure the risk modeling and this type of quantification framework are embedded in their national climate planning processes. So this can provide the technical expertise necessary to evaluate adaptation impacts and secure financing in a long term.
I agree with you, Serene, and I think complementing that, I would say developing partnerships around those capacity building efforts and developing partnerships with academic institutions and international organizations, leveraging expertise, bringing in the expertise of insurance companies and other key stakeholders to fill these knowledge gaps, offering guidance on emerging climate risk and financial tools, expanding data sharing platforms and leveraging cutting edge technologies like remote sensing. This can all advance and enhance national capacity to respond to evolving climate challenges. And this is why it's a priority for UNDP for us to work in this way where we partner with governments, we partner with other development partners, but we also really look at where the role of the private sector is and how we could pull on the knowledge that they have. They've made risk their business. Their entire business is based on understanding risk. How do we bring that to serve a development and resilience building agenda?
I think with that, this is a beautiful note where we can actually wrap up the episode. Thank you both again for being a part of it, but mostly for sharing all your insights on integrating CDRFI into NABs and also for really identifying and taking us through the different finance, knowledge, and capacity gaps, and most importantly as well, the need to really kind of leverage these partnerships to close these gaps. So with that, thank you both for being a part of the NABs and CDRFI 101 episode. For those listening, if you found today's discussion insightful, be sure to check out our other episodes under the CB Stories Climate Action 101 series. Thank you both again for being a part of it, and thank you all as well for listening.